In a suburb of Tokyo in the 1970s, a boy spent his afternoons catching insects in the ponds and fields, before the city swallowed them. He remembered that feeling for decades, and when he sat down in 1990 to design his first major game, he built it around the question: what if you could catch creatures the way he caught bugs, trade them with friends, and carry them with you everywhere? That question became Pokémon, the highest grossing media franchise in history, $150 billion and counting. This is how it happened. Satoshi Tajiri was born on August 28, 1965 in Machida, a suburb southwest of Tokyo that still had a rural character in the late 1960s and early 1970s. As a child, he spent hours in the fields and ponds near his home catching insects, beetles, larvae, anything he could find. His neighborhood nickname was Dr. Bug. He loved the act of searching, finding and collecting. As urbanization spread through Machida's outskirts, the ponds were drained, the fields were built over, the insects disappeared. Tajiri's childhood hobby became impossible in the place where it had started. He redirected his obsession toward arcade games, becoming deeply skilled in games like Space Invaders and developing a reputation in the local gaming scene. In 1981, when he was 16 years old, he began publishing a handwritten gaming fanzine called Game Freak, initially photocopied and sold by hand. The magazine covered arcade tips, game reviews and strategies. The highest selling issue reached approximately 10,000 copies. Through Game Freak, the fanzine, Tajiri met Ken Sugimori, an illustrator who would become the visual architect of everything that followed. In 1989, after years studying programming and Famicom development, Tajiri and Sugimori formally incorporated Game Freak as a video game development company. Their first commercial release was Quinty, published by Namco in Japan in 1989, released as Mandel Palace in North America. The transformation from fanzine to development company was not accidental. Tajiri had spent the 1980s studying how games worked from the inside, not just playing them, but understanding their mechanics, their systems, their architecture. The fanzine was his education. Game Freak, the company, was the application of everything he had taught himself. Tajiri's trajectory, from bug-catching child to arcade obsessive to self-taught developer, was entirely self-directed. No formal game design education, no corporate path, just a childhood memory and the determination to build something from it. In 1990, Tajiri saw the Game Boy for the first time, and the idea that had been forming since childhood took its final shape. Tajiri conceived the idea for Pokémon in 1990, the year after Nintendo released the Game Boy. The specific inspiration was the link cable. Watching two Game Boys connect by a link cable, Tajiri imagined creatures traveling through the cable between the two devices, as if insects were crawling through a wire. The collecting mechanism of his childhood, the social act of trading with friends, and the competitive dimension of battling, all three elements crystallized around that image. He pitched the concept to Nintendo. Shigeru Miyamoto, creator of Mario and Donkey Kong, agreed to mentor him through development. Nintendo provided funding. What followed was 6 years. Pokémon Red and Green took 6 years to complete and nearly bankrupted Game Freak in the process. At points during development, there was barely enough money to pay employees. 5 staff members quit. Tajiri did not take a salary. He lived off his father's income throughout the development period. To generate cash during the lean years, the team took on a contract project for Nintendo, a puzzle game called Yoshi for the NES, released in 1991. It kept Game Freak solvent long enough to finish the project Tajiri had started. The core mechanics Tajiri designed during those 6 years were specific and deliberate. 151 Pokémon, creatures based loosely on insects, animals and mythological beings, each with unique stats, movesets and type matchups. The type system, fire beats grass, water beats fire, grass beats water, created a rock-paper-scissors strategic layer accessible to children but deep enough to sustain competitive play. The two-version model, Red and Green releasing simultaneously, was designed to make trading structurally necessary. Each version contained Pokémon the other didn't. Completing the Pokédex required either owning both games or trading with a friend. The link cable wasn't an optional feature, it was the point. 6 years building a game nobody was sure would sell, on hardware that Nintendo's own engineers considered outdated by the time it shipped. The Game Boy's processing power was inferior to competitors. The screen was monochrome. The internal team debated whether to cancel the project entirely. Pokémon Red and Green launched in Japan on February 27, 1996. Nintendo expected modest sales from an aging platform. What happened next surprised everyone. Pokémon Red and Green launched in Japan on February 27, 1996. They did not immediately explode. Initial sales were strong, but not extraordinary. The games found their audience through word of mouth. Children trading Pokémon in schoolyards, passing strategies between friends, the social mechanics doing exactly what Tajiri had designed them to do. The Pokémon trading card game launched in Japan in October 1996, adding a physical collecting and trading layer that extended the franchise beyond the Game Boy. Players who couldn't afford a Game Boy could collect cards. The franchise's audience began expanding beyond gamers. The Pokémon anime premiered in Japan in April 1997, following Ash Ketchum, named Satoshi in Japan directly after Tajiri, and his partner Pikachu across the Kanto region. The anime introduced Pikachu as the franchise's central mascot, a role the yellow electric mouse had not played in the original games, where it was simply one of the 151 creatures. The anime reached an audience the games hadn't: younger children, non-gamers, and most importantly, a television audience that received a weekly advertisement for the game without realizing it. In December 1997, an episode of the Pokémon anime caused approximately 685 children in Japan to experience seizure symptoms due to rapidly flashing light effects. The incident made international news. The series was temporarily suspended, and the episode was permanently banned from rebroadcast. It was the first time Pokémon had appeared in Western media coverage. By the time the games reached North America, launching as Pokémon Red and Blue on September 28, 1998, the franchise's expansion strategy was already operating on multiple simultaneous channels. Games driving anime awareness, anime driving merchandise sales, trading cards creating a physical community layer, each element feeding demand for the others. The "Gotta Catch 'em all" slogan, introduced for the Western market, directly communicated the completionist compulsion that Tajiri had built into the core design. Pokémon's Western launch in 1998 was one of the most complete franchise rollouts ever executed. Games, anime, trading cards and merchandise arriving in overlapping waves rather than as a single product. Children who encountered Pokémon through the anime bought the games. Children who played the games collected the cards. The franchise surrounded its audience rather than waiting to be discovered. By 1999, Pokémon was a global phenomenon, and it was about to become something no one had a word for yet. Pokémon the first movie opened in Japan in July 1998 and in North America in November 1999. The film franchise has sold over 190 million tickets and grossed over $1.8 billion at the worldwide box office across all films. The trading card game had become a crisis in schools across the United States and Europe. Cards were being stolen, traded compulsively, and banned from classrooms. The demand for Pokémon cards crashed the supply chain. The Pokémon trading card game has since sold over 75 billion cards, making it the best-selling trading card game of all time, surpassing Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokémon Gold and Silver launched in Japan in November 1999, introducing the Johto region, 100 new Pokémon bringing the total to 251, a day and night cycle, and a post-game return to the original Kanto region. Gold and Silver sold approximately 23 million copies combined worldwide, demonstrating that the franchise could sustain a second generation without losing its audience. The generational structure Tajiri's team established became the franchise's defining architecture. Each generation introduced a new region, a new set of Pokémon, new gameplay mechanics, and a new anime season. The formula repeated across every subsequent generation. Ruby and Sapphire in 2002, Diamond and Pearl in 2006, Black and White in 2010, X and Y in 2013, Sun and Moon in 2016, each one reaching the existing audience while onboarding a new generation of children. The genius of Pokémon's generational structure was demographic renewal. Each new generation of games targeted children approximately 6 to 12 years old. The children who played Red and Blue in 1996 aged out of the core demographic by 2002, but by then a new cohort had arrived through Sapphire and Ruby. The franchise didn't need to retain its original audience indefinitely. It needed to be rediscovered by every new generation of children. The Pokémon anime series has been watched by more than 1 billion viewers across 183 countries, a reach that ensured every new generation of children encountered Pokémon through television before they were old enough to buy a game. Pokémon's staying power across 20 years wasn't driven by innovation. It was driven by consistency, the same core loop of catching, training, trading and battling, refreshed with new creatures and new settings every 3 to 4 years. The franchise never tried to be something it wasn't, and that discipline, maintaining the loop while renewing the surface, kept it relevant across 5 console generations. But in 2016, Pokémon did something it had never done before. It left the screen entirely. Pokémon GO launched on July 6, 2016, developed by Niantic in partnership with the Pokémon Company and Nintendo. An augmented reality mobile game that placed Pokémon in the real world, visible through a smartphone camera. Players walked to catch them. Pokémon GO generated over $200 million in its first month, the fastest mobile game in history to reach that milestone at the time. Within weeks of launch, players were gathering in public spaces in numbers that alarmed city authorities. Central Park in New York, Hyde Park in London, everywhere simultaneously. The game reached players who had never engaged with Pokémon before, adults who had no childhood connection to the franchise, people in countries where the original games had limited penetration. It became generally global in a way the Game Boy games had never been. By 2022, Pokémon GO had generated over $5 billion in lifetime revenue. Pokémon Sword and Shield launched November 15, 2019 on Nintendo Switch, the franchise's first home console mainline entry, selling over 24.27 million copies worldwide. Pokémon Legends Arceus, January 2022, took the franchise into open world territory for the first time, selling 14.83 million copies. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, November 2022, sold over 20 million units globally by the end of 2022, becoming the most commercially successful launch in the franchise's history to that point. Pokémon Legends Z2A launched October 16, 2025 on both Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2, set in Lumoy City from the Kalos region and introduced real-time action combat, replacing the turn-based battle system that had been the franchise's foundation for 30 years. It was the first mainline Pokémon release on Nintendo Switch 2 and the most structurally significant mechanical departure in the franchise's history. As of March 2025, the Pokémon video game series has sold over 489 million units worldwide, making it the second best-selling video game franchise behind Mario. The complete franchise, games, trading cards, merchandise, anime and film has generated more than $150 billion in lifetime revenue as of 2024, making Pokémon the highest grossing entertainment media franchise in history, ahead of Hello Kitty, Mickey Mouse, Star Wars and every other entertainment property ever created. In October 2024, Pokémon TCG Pocket, a digital card game app, launched and generated approximately $180 million in revenue within its first 6 weeks, recording one of the strongest mobile launches in history. Pokémon in 2026 is not the same franchise it was in 1996. The demographics are different, the platforms are different, the products are different, but the core loop, find a creature, catch it, train it, trade it, battle with it, has run unbroken for 30 years. Tajiri designed that loop for himself, for the boy who used to catch insects in the fields of Machida before the city took them away. He built the game he wished had existed, and it became the most valuable entertainment franchise in history. From a handwritten gaming fanzine in 1981 to $150 billion in lifetime revenue in 2024. Pokémon is a story of one specific feeling, preserved, packaged and handed to every generation of children since 1996. The feeling of searching for something, of finding it, of showing it to your friend and trading it for something they had found. Satoshi Tajiri built that feeling from a childhood memory of catching insects in ponds that no longer existed. 6 years of near bankruptcy, a father's income keeping the company alive, 5 employees walking away, all of it for a game about pocket monsters on a Game Boy, that Nintendo's own engineers thought was already obsolete. Pokémon wasn't built on market research, it wasn't built on a franchise strategy. It was built on the memory of something lost, and the belief that other people might want to find it too. They did.